off and in your career about how important it was for you as a young entrepreneur and innovator to come to America. And you've said there's no other country where you could have achieved what you've achieved today.
Definitely.
When you look at the US today, the landscape, would that still apply in 2020? And are we broadly as a society doing everything we should be doing to foster that same environment that brought you here?
Yeah, well, I think U.S. is still great with respect to innovation and fostering entrepreneurship. Still great. I think we don't want to be complacent, and we want to say, okay, how can we make it better over time? And I think we want to be cautious about the gradual creep of regulations and bureaucracy. The rules and regulations are immortal, and if we keep making more of a year and do not do something about removing them, then eventually we will be able to do nothing. This is very important, and I think not well appreciated. This is sort of like the slow boil of the frog. You know, his frog doesn't jump out because it gets just slightly hotter each year. We should be aware of this, I think, particularly at the state level.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that because you've been running into that some in California. But let me ask in a broader sense. I mean, you've been working with government. You do business with government now. You've expressed strong feelings about government, pro and con, at different times, depending on the circumstances. But when you think through an innovation lens in the broadest sense, what's the right role for government? Like, what is the role? Where should government be a player, and where should it be hands off? What's ideal in your mind?
Sure. A lot of the time, the best thing that government can do is just get out of the way. And so I would say that's the default, probably the best thing to do. Then after that, it would be ensuring that there are not artificial monopolies, that there is a fertile ground for startups. And because what can happen over time is that you can get regulatory capture by large companies where they influence the regulators and the legislators to favor their situation, and then you have a forest of redwoods, and you just can't. The little trees can't grow. So we really want to have an environment that tends to favor smaller companies and startups. The big companies really don't need the support. But they will generally try to work the system to establish a monopoly of some kind. We should be wary of that. In general, it's like I think we could consider changing the way we think of things from, say, capitalism versus communism. I apologize for the long answer, but I think this is kind of capitalism versus communism, and think more in terms of feedback loops. So. Is a given organization, does a given organization, government or commercial, have good feedback loop for the customer, whether it's the people as a whole or whoever the customers are? And if you've got like a duopoly or oligopoly, they're generally going to have a weak response to their customer, and if they're a monopoly, they're going to have the weakest response to the customer. And the reason that government, I think, is often the worst at responding to the customers being the people, is that they're a monopoly that can't go bankrupt, or usually cannot go bankrupt. So there's not really a cleansing process for a government short of a catastrophe. So I mean, if you want to complain about the DMV, what's the alternative?
Yeah. So a couple things to unpack there. First, I do want to, when you talk about redwoods dominating the air and smaller companies having a challenge, some people would hear that as being the situation in Silicon Valley today. I don't necessarily think that's what you implied, but is that what you see in Silicon Valley today?
Well, I think this is not a Silicon Valley problem. It's a general problem. I mean, if you look at, say, how many candy companies are there? Like, Big Candy is like consolidated into like 3 companies or something, and they also own all the dog food and the baby food. So it's like, when's the last time there was some good candy? What's the forcing function for a new candy bar? I haven't seen one in ages. So we got to watch this like consolidation that ends up resulting in lower responsiveness to the end customer, and like I said, it's like you can think of like in the limit, government is simply the largest corporation.
Yeah.
There's some people. I think it's a false dichotomy to look at government and sort of industry as separate. Government is simply a corporation in the limit. It is the ultimate corporation with a monopoly. But then as you get closer to, like I said, a monopoly, as the feedback loop gets weaker and less responsive to the customer, that's where you have something which does not maximize the happiness of people, which should be our objective overall.
We had a couple of people last night at this event who are joining the Biden administration, a couple of the president-elect senior advisors. And clearly, one of the things heavily on their mind is sort of a new national industrial policy, for want of a better term. They talked about spending a lot more on research and development and fostering innovation, big government spending, basically. Is that kind of national industrial policy a good idea? Is that a good use of government right now in your mind? And if it is, where would you focus that kind of effort?
Well, it's government's responsibility to establish the rules of the game and then ensure that those rules are properly enforced. Like sort of like the referees on the field, and it's like football or something. Then you got the rules, and you got the referees. You got to make sure the rules are the right rules, and the referees are enforcing the rules. I think that's an important role for government to ensure that the rules are correct and that the incentives are what we actually want them to be for, like I said, the long-term maximum happiness of the people into the future. Where I think government does not do a great job is when they want to not just be a referee on the field, they want to be a player on the field. This does not end up in a good situation.
Picking winners and losers, that kind of thing.
Effectively, government incentives do favor. Like you're going to say, like, what are the rules of the game? This is obviously an imperfect analogy, but I do think it is a pretty good one. That you want the government to be carefully focused on ensuring the rules of the game are what we actually want them to be. That we're getting rid of old rules. This is very important, which is not occurring. And that the rules are enforced such that we have ethical behavior of companies. Now, there are times when you have an unpriced externality, such as the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere. So then, if that is not priced in effectively, then you can get behavior in industry behavior that does not that we think is arguably not good for the environment or not good for the future of the planet. Most of the time, provided pricing is correct, you will see correct behavior from private industry. So, that's like one example where if we effectively price carbon, we'll see the right behavior, and then the government does not need to try to pick technology winners and losers. They can simply incent the outcome. I think it's incredibly important that government focus on incenting the outcome, not the path.
You mentioned California, and I have to ask, you're in Texas right now, and there's been speculation, and you've been vocal this year on some of your frustration in California. Are you relocating? Is it happening? And can you talk a little bit about what's been troubling you in California so much this year since you mentioned it?
Sure. Well, first of all, Tesla and SpaceX obviously have massive operations in California. In fact, it's worth noting that Tesla is the last car company still manufacturing cars in California. SpaceX is the last aerospace company still doing significant manufacturing in California. So there used to be over a dozen car plants in California, and California used to be the center of aerospace manufacturing. My companies are the last two left. I want to emphasize. So that's a very important point to make. For myself, yes, I have moved to Texas. We've got the Starship development here in South Texas, where I am right now. We're hopefully going to do a launch later today. And then we've got the big factory development just outside of Austin for the Giga Texas development.
And you made the move really. But why? Why did you go there? Is that all a personal decision, or was it? It was partly a corporate environment decision, really, for the headquarters, isn't it?
Well, in my case, the two biggest things that I've got going on right now are the Starship development in South Texas, which was done. This was set in motion like 5 years ago, and then the the big new U.S. factory for Tesla, which is called Giga Texas, just by Austin. So those are the two big projects. So these necessarily drive the use of my time here. And then the other big thing for Tesla right now is the Giga Berlin. So I was in Berlin. I spent a fair bit of time in Berlin working on that. I think California is great. So there's a lot of things that are really great about California. Obviously, it's the biggest economy in the country, most number of people. But I do think that there is something that happens when, if it's, go back to the sort of sports team analogy, like if a team has been winning for too long, they do tend to get a little complacent, a little entitled, and then they don't win the championship anymore. So California's been winning for a long time. And I think they're taking it for granted a little bit. Yeah.
Let's talk a little more on innovation in corporate America in general. Innovation has always been core to who you are. It's how you think about your companies and your role. In the corporate suite in America, are companies in general fostering and developing and innovation? And as the leaders in corporate America, you've got a lot of them on this call. Do we prioritize innovation as much as we might or need to? Do you think right now?
Well, I think there's innovation, but then there's also just our CEOs in corporate America focus enough on product improvement. I think the answer is no. And I think generally my advice or my recommendation would really be spend less time on finance, spend less time in conference rooms, less time on PowerPoint, and more time just trying to make your product as amazing as possible. The company will take their cue from that.
Why is that? Is that because boards or shareholders are too finance and return focused and don't think enough about product as being at the heart of value? Is it because a certain kind of skill is cultivated? Why is that? Why is that a problem in the C-suite?
I think there might be too many MBAs running companies. There's the MBAization of America, which I think is maybe not that great. There should be more focus on the product, the service itself, less time on board meetings, less time on financials. The financials come as a result of, like you say, like, what's the point of a company at all? And why even have companies? It's like a company is an assembly of people gathered together to create a product or service and deliver that product or service. And sometimes people lose sight of that. A company has no value in and of itself. It only has value to the degree that it is an effective allocator of resources to create goods and services that are of greater value than the cost of the inputs. This thing we call profit is should just mean over time that the value of the output is worth more than the inputs.
And it's a reflection of the quality of the product more than. So if the product is good, presumably the profits follow rather than profits being involved versus profits. And
yeah, sometimes people sort of have it backwards, and if people are getting sort of the incentive structure is coming from the financial side of things. I don't know. I just earnestly would recommend to anyone listening that just spend less time in meeting rooms, less time on PowerPoint presentations, less time on a spreadsheet, and more time on the factory floor, more time with customers. And obviously a lot of people out there are already doing that, but I would just urge people to say, like, hey, step back a second and say, is your product as awesome as it could be? Probably not. What could you do to make it great? And if you like think about innovation, like maybe it has to be like breakthrough innovation. I don't think it necessarily has to be breakthrough innovation. It's just like just make your product better. This is the thing that really matters.
Is that kind of product mindset, the kind you described, is that learnable? Is it teachable, or is there an innate element that somebody has to have to really to do it well? I mean, not everybody's innovating or thinking on your scale a lot, but you look for innovative people when you hire them. Is it something that is pretty easily learnable, or is there some innate quality in the people that succeed?
I think it is learnable. I mean, step number one would be try. and have you tried? And have you tried hard? And if you haven't tried hard, try hard. I think it is learnable. It's not some mysterious thing. It's just basically just be like an absolute perfectionist about the product that you make, the service that's provided. Seek negative feedback from all quarters. From customers, from people who aren't customers, like, hey, okay, what can we make this? How can we make this better? And I think it's absolutely learnable. And just if you find yourself spending a lot of time in getting presentations and reviewing spreadsheets, you're barking up the wrong tree. That's the effect, not the cause. So just get out there on the factory floor, get out there in the stores, talk to customers, think about what would you love to have. Oh, and sometimes I think, and I've had this conversation at Tesla a few times, where it's like we're trying to think, okay, it's at times like we don't love this product, but we think others will love it. That's not really how it works. If you don't love it, don't expect others will either.
Now, you're at a moment, I want to talk about your companies in a minute, but you're at a moment where particularly Tesla and SpaceX are really growing in lots of ways right now. And you've had plenty of ups and downs even to this point, but it's a high point. On your own journey in this way, what are the biggest mistakes you've made that you've learned from? Because you talked a little bit about being willing to put yourself out there, fail, learn, keep growing. What were turning points for you that really you said, wait a minute, this is wrong, or this is the wrong move, either personally or for the company, and that you learned from that have fed to where you are right now?
Well, if I had to list all the mistakes, this would be a very long call. So it's too many to even think of. I'm trying to think like how could I classify them in some way? Well, I mean, some of the things I mentioned just before, it's like where I was recommending that people spend less time in a conference room, less time getting presentations and spreadsheets, and that, like, generally that's like when I have spent too much time in a conference room, that's generally when things have gone awry. And when I go and spend time on the factory floor, or really using the cars, thinking about the rockets, it's like that's where things have gone better.
But does that risk? Some people would worry that risks sending a message to your teams that you personally have to be involved for something to work, that you can't delegate or you can't trust them. And I think that's one thing that makes some executives reluctant. They're trying to find that line between showing their personal commitment and trusting their subordinates to do the work. So, I mean, you're known for being passionate, sleep on the factory floor and all that. But is that a concern for you, or do you not care? That's not an issue for you. How do you think about it?
Well, there's a lot of talented people at SpaceX and Tesla, and I think the morale is good. I for sure respect them greatly, and it's an honor to work with them. And I find that if I am engrossed in the details of the issues, this does not result in them feeling better, but worse, but feeling better. Like they're in my experience, more energized. It's like, if you think about like war, it's like, do you want the general in some ivory tower or on the front lines? Like, the troops are gonna fight a lot harder if they see the general on the front lines than if they think general's in some cushy situation. So it's like nobody bleeds for the prince in the palace. Get out there on the goddamn front lines and show them that you care and that you're not just in some plush office somewhere.
Yeah, I'm in my plush office right now, actually.
Yeah. Well, you write stuff too.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's talk quickly about Tesla. But both Tesla and SpaceX are scaling up today. In fact, I mean, Tesla touched 600 billion, I think, yesterday in valuation. Today, you said you're going to raise 5 billion through new stock sales. I assume, and I assume what those gains are really, in your mind, going to do is help you scale up faster, be poured back into investment, because now is the moment to do that. Is that the plan here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's, we're kind of debating, like, should we raise money or should we not? It wasn't like a 100% sure thing. In the end, we thought, well, we can retire a lot of the debt and increase the security of the company, probably a good thing. And for less than 1% of dilutions, probably makes sense. But we're neither here nor there on that. I think it's could have gone either way.
So the money's for really debt retirement, you're saying today?
Debt retirement, and, like, I guess to have a bit more of a war chest, or I guess at the end of the day, what is money? Money is an entry in a database.
Okay, I want to take a couple questions from the audience. First, I want to go to a video question that we solicited. If we could play that.
Hello, my name is Catherine Parsons, and I'm the CEO of technology education company Decoded. I want to know, are machines able to innovate, or is innovation an inherently human capability?
Yeah, I think machines will. Well, my views on AI, I've spoken a lot about this. AI will be able to do everything better than human over time, everything.
Everything, including sound. Okay, Elon, here's one. If you could, the very quick, easy one. If you could redo the entire transportation infrastructure of the United States, how would it look? Michael Fountain asks.
Entire transportation infrastructure? Wow. The main thing I see missing here is that we need to go 3D in cities in order to alleviate traffic congestion. And I think probably the best way to do that is with tunnels. It may sound a bit silly, but
boring company that you started, which looks at that.
Yeah. In fact, for many years, I was asked, what do I see as the biggest opportunity for new companies? And I kept saying, can someone please build tunnels? For half a decade, I said this, and nobody built tunnels. So I was like, fine, we'll start a company and start building some tunnels. And we've got the first tunnel that's going to be opening up, first commercial tunnel opening up in Vegas, going from the convention center to the Strip. And I think we will have an opportunity to try it out and be able to see that, hey, if we just go 3D in cities, we don't have to be stuck in gridlock. This is great. Yeah. So I'd recommend tunnels. And then for long distance travel, you can do tunnels or tubes. But if you evacuate the tunnel and essentially remove the air or most of the air, you can get rid of the air friction, and you can go supersonic and do so with no dependence on weather and with no need to get to high altitude or create any sonic boom issues. So that's what I meant by sort of the hyperloop. It's just basically a pressurized electric car in a vacuum tube. So I think this would be a revolution in transport that would be amazing, and hopefully others do it, not just the Boring Company.
Okay, here's one. Elon, I'm a founder and CEO of a private company in the Valley. One of the changes I'm seeing is people trying to force the company on political and social matters. Making demands not to sell to police or not to sell to government agencies. There's walkouts and protests of Google. Do you think this kind of thing is having a chilling effect or will have a chilling effect on innovation?
Well, a lot of this stuff is centered in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I think there's the Silicon Valley or the San Francisco Bay Area has too much influence on the world, in my opinion. And I say that as someone who has spent most of his life in California, mostly in the Bay Area.
So you're like your friend Peter Thiel feels it's gotten more stifling up there. You're expressing you agree with Peter on that.
Yes, I think there's the Bay Area has outsized influence in the world. So
is that changing? Is the pandemic changing that? I mean, is there a real chance here that with departures and people leaving the valley that we're going to see some of that scatter out into the countryside for good now, post-pandemic?
I think we'll see some reduction in the influence of Silicon Valley. But the social media is still very much centered in Silicon Valley. So I think we need to be concerned about mind viruses, just memes that travel very quickly through social media that may or may not be correct. And we certainly want to encourage a healthy dialogue. So there's some out there who just want to shut down one side of a debate or another. I think we should resist that.
We're out of time, unfortunately, because I could go for an hour. We didn't even get to half of the questions I had, but thank you for the time today. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
And hope we can continue the conversation another time. And it's always fascinating to hear what's on your mind. So thanks and good luck on your projects right now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Elon.